Welcome tonight to First Thursday, the first Thursday of National Poetry Day, or as we say at Sarin, every day is International Poetry Day for us. We love it from everywhere and every day. Our first reader this evening, we're so happy to be launching Alison Binney's debut pamphlet, Other Women's Kitchens. This won the Dyslexia Poetry Prize this year. And it was just a straightaway winner this time. It's just beautifully themed. Like just a lovely cover, and it's quite something. I'm sure you'll appreciate when you hear Alison read some of her poetry. She teaches English at a state secondary school and to trainee teachers on the PGCE English course at the University of Cambridge. Since creating more space in her life for writing over the last 4 years, she has been widely published, including in the North, Magma, Under the Radar, Butcher's Dog, and Pop Shot. Her poems have been longlisted in the National Poetry Competition and highly commended in the Bridport Prize. She founded the Cambridge branch of the National Writing Project, which brings together teachers as writers and occasionally leads one-day writing and walking courses in the Peak District. Rebecca Goss says of her work, "Open this pamphlet and you will find a woman ready to revisit past experience and reframe it in the present. These smart, deft poems speak of an identity no longer hidden, but now claimed, written down, understood. A new song sings in my bones." Welcome, Alison Binney. We're looking forward to hearing your beautiful poems.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And just to start with a few very brief thank yous, I have to thank Dyslexia magazine for organising the competition, and a massive thank you to Sarin Books for publishing my debut pamphlet, particularly to Amy and Sarah for making the whole process of publishing and marketing really smooth and really supportive for somebody doing it for the first time. So thank you. Thank you to my friend Kate Winter for designing the beautiful cover. Kate is a friend from rowing, and we've seen each other in rowing kit far more often than in normal clothes. So it's been lovely to get to know each other in a different way on this process. Thanks to Rebecca Goss, who's here tonight, for really transformational mentoring, for helping me to craft these poems and for giving me confidence in my voice as a writer. And thank you to all my friends who've supported me. There's people here tonight from school, from my own school, from my teaching, from my social life. Thank you so much for coming, especially actually to my friends from Sister Act in Cambridge. Sister Act is a local lesbian group, and I think if my poems are for anybody, then they're particularly for you. So I really appreciate your support. Thank you. And it's an honour to read alongside Robert Seater, whose poem I Come From I have taught so many times in school and to PGC trainees, though I found out about 10 minutes ago from Robert that there's a line in it which has been edited from the version that I teach in school.
Shocking.
So you'll have to buy his collection from Sarin to find out what the line is.
I might reveal it, Alison. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'd love to share with you a few poems from the pamphlets. And I'm going to start with a poem called The L Word, which when I set out to write this, it was an attempt to rehabilitate my relationship with the word lesbian, which is a word that describes my identity, but which I'd felt quite uncomfortable with. But as many of you will know, once you start writing a poem, it has a life of its own. And in writing it, I think far from rehabilitating my relationship with the word, I sort of discovered why I had struggled with that identity for so long. So the poem is called The L Word. Miss Healy's a lesbian. He licked the first syllable off the back of his front teeth like a bogey, blew the B in our faces, spat the rest on the floor. All that week, the new word tainted our tongues with the cling of a stamp. At home, I turned it over in my mouth, wondering what it meant for funny, sparky Miss Healy, with her glasses and hair like mine. What did it mean for Martina when Mum's lips pinched at the word? In the garden, my brother was McEnroe. I was Virginia Wade. Later, it flicked like a spitball from the back of the class and slid down the nape of my neck. If you wiped it away, they knew it had stuck. I kept it under my tongue, like a piece of old gum, brought out to chew in the dark. When its bubble burst on my lips, I gulped it down. It's a lump in my gut, even now, something I swallowed whole and cannot bring up. I can't take the taste away, so I settle for gay. The next poem is the poem where the title of the pamphlet comes from Other Women's Kitchens. I like collections where the whole title is buried in a poem rather than the title of a poem. And it struck me when I looked through the pamphlet how many of the poems were about food or kitchen type places. And I love kitchens. I think they're often the places in a house where the most important things happen, or where the most important things are kind of talked about. So the kitchen you can see on the cover is pretty much the setting for this poem, which is called Every Time I Came Home. Every time I came home, someone I didn't know was getting married. Even the couples my parents barely knew were enough for endless musings over tea, how they met, what she might wear, whether the height difference mattered, less than living together, more than baldness. Soon, every time I came home, someone was having a baby, a crop of grinning children on the fridge. I had nothing to bring to that table. I pushed their questions around my plate, going to bed hungry, dreaming of other women's kitchens. Since I published this, a few people I've spoken to have felt the need to tell me about their kitchen in talking about the pamphlet, often in quite a confessional way. So I'm finding out a lot about other people's kitchens, which I'm quite enjoying. The next poem is called The Word, and it's about my favourite bookshop, which is Gay's The Word bookshop in London, which was really important for me, and I now know for a lot of other gay people as being the first space that I went into that was recognisably a gay space. But as I now realise is quite a common experience, I couldn't just go straight in. I kind of walked up and down before being brave enough to set foot inside. So I think, given how common that experience is, if I was going to set up a business in London, I'd probably make a cafe on Marchmont Street, have a lot of anxious gay people as customers, I think. Anyway, it's an amazing bookshop, and it celebrated its 40th anniversary a few years ago, and I wrote this poem in commemoration of that. The Word. It was just catching the train to London. Lots of people went to London. It was just remembering to go right, then left, then right, then left again to the bookshop I couldn't name. It was just seeing the pink triangle sign and walking past. Other people walked past. Nothing happened. No one thought they were gay. I wondered if they might be gay. It was just having a drink next door. It was just walking past again. I might be buying a book for a friend or studying queer theory for no particular reason. It was just going in. It was just going in and coming home for the first time. The next poem is one of a series of poems called Everyday Heterosexual Predicaments, where the idea is that I take a situation and just flip it as if gay people were in the majority and straight people were in the minority. And it's just a way of looking at situations and the sort of things that a lot of gay people will recognise as kind of everyday, but might be surprising for other people. And this one is called The Soap Opera. And I wrote this after a thing happened, which is just really frustrating. You know, when you're watching a TV series and you get really attached to a lesbian or gay character and you're really rooting for them, and they meet someone and fall in love. And then the next episode, one of them dies or both of them die. And it's just such a pattern. It's really frustrating. I've never forgiven the writers of Last Tango in Halifax, where that happened, just to name one series. And I wrote this poem after I'd heard on the radio that this had happened to a character in a soap that I don't even watch, but it just annoyed me. So that's why I wrote this poem. Everyday Heterosexual Predicaments, The Soap Opera. After 20 years, the street is ready for a heterosexual. Not that it's clear at first. He's just a normal bloke, friendly, doesn't shove it in your face, decent even. Then he starts those over-the-shoulder looks, meaning, I'm hugging my boyfriend, but really I'm dreaming of that girl in the corner shop. It's quite sweet once you get used to it. Her parents can't know, obviously. His are dead. A wedding is planned for June. The ratings soar. No one guesses the ambulance racing to deliver the barmaid's baby will swerve round a kitten the very second the corner shop girl steps backwards off the curb, blowing a secret kiss at his bedroom window. She dies in his arms. He wins a BAFTA. The next poem is inspired by the remake of Wonder Woman. There's been a more recent one, which I haven't seen, but this was inspired by the 2017 film with Gal Gadot in. I'm not really a fan of superhero films, but I really recommend Wonder Woman. I loved the first 30 minutes of it in particular, which are set on the island that Wonder Woman grows up on, full of Amazonian women, and it's all lovely. So if you only want to watch 30 minutes, just watch the first half hour, and then a ship crashes into the island from the First World War, and then Wonder Woman has to go and fix the First World War, and it gets a bit silly after that. It's watchable, but the first half hour is the best. And this poem is kind of inspired by that. It's kind of a fantasy about what it would be like to live on Wonder Woman's island. On Wonder Woman's island, the women are all leather and deltoids, sword fights and whirling hair. They call, "You are stronger than you know," reaching out sinewy forearms to lift each other up off the sand. Anytime you can yell, "Shield," just for the hell of it, and a girl will kneel, shield angled over thigh, while another runs up, springs, fires an arrow mid-leap, lands on a silver horse. At night, there's a cave with an underground waterfall jacuzzi and a nook in the wall thick with fur. And if the men come, lugging guns up the beach, you sleep on, cat-like. Seeing only sheer cliffs and bare rock, they will soon turn tail, their flag not worth the planting here, and the breeze long gone. So from fantasy to reality, and the very next poem is about my first kind of date with my partner, Emily, who's just behind me on the sofa. And I have to say, Emily absolutely loves being in a sort of sandwich in the pamphlet between Wonder Woman and Anne Lister, which is about as good as a sandwich gets, I think. So this is a poem about, well, we'd played tennis with each other many times before our first actual date. And this poem is called How We Knew. I think when you mentioned you'd chosen the wine because you liked the picture on the bottle, while I was setting the oven gloves on fire and trying to pretend I hadn't. And when you admitted you'd flirted from your end of the tennis court the whole summer, and I confessed I was too short-sighted to see. The individual chocolate mousses clinched it. Then you knew and I knew, and the evening stretched before us, the air fat with so much knowing it hurt to breathe. And I didn't know what to do, and neither did you, until somehow we did. Hands, lips, skin, my single bed, rocking with laughter, long after dark. And the recipe is Jamie Oliver for the chocolate mousses. If you need to woo anyone, I recommend it. A sort of political poem now. This one inspired, in inverted commas, by Andrea Leadsom, the MP. Again, it was a poem sparked by being annoyed about something. So it was a time when sex and relationships education was being discussed and revised. And in an interview, Andrea Leadsom said, she said, "My party has done a huge amount to support LGBT rights. But at the same time, I also agree that it's right that parents should be able to choose the moment at which their children become exposed to that information." And I didn't much like the idea of being a kind of information that a child should be only exposed to when they're 16 or over. So I wrote this poem called Exposure. Dear parent/carer, if you have not yet chosen the moment to expose your child to the information of our existence. Please indicate this by ticking the appropriate box at the bottom of this poem. We will then take the necessary steps to ensure no further contact with your child. Should accidental exposure occur, such as the formation of friendships with our offspring, being in close proximity to public hand-holding or similar, your child may exhibit the following symptoms: curiosity, empathy, loss of prejudice. These effects are usually temporary if normal conditions are quickly restored. Report the incident to the relevant authorities, who will activate further protective measures for your child until the run-up to his/her 16th birthday, at which point we will resume teaching, guarding, entertaining, serving, and nursing him/her. The next poem I'll read is just simply about holding hands in public, which is kind of a very natural thing to do, but I still find it, even in Cambridge, which is a relatively safe place to be, it's not something that I feel like we can just do as unself-consciously as we would like to be able to do. So that was the thinking behind this poem, which is called When We Hold Hands. When we hold hands, they don't always know how to go. My right turned in, your left turned out, or the other way round, twisting one way, then the other, like teenagers, so used after so long to how we fit in the dark. It's strange, this not knowing how we fit in the street, where our held hands hold a middle finger up, where we are still dangerous dykes. Amy said I was allowed to share poems that aren't in the pamphlet, so I thought I'd throw another one in, and then I'll finish with two more love poems at the end. So I thought, because it's National Poetry Day and the theme for that this year is choice, that I'd choose a poem which has a choice in it. And this poem was inspired by that philosophical conundrum about the Philosophers Axe, where if you have an axe and then you replace the handle, and then you replace the head, and then you replace the handle again, is it the same axe or is it not the same axe? And that put me in mind of that thing that people say sometimes about whether our bodies replace all their cells every 7 years, and you know, people will say, well, that means you're not the same person you were 7 years ago. And I can hear that might be true, but in my bones, literally in my bones, I can't believe that. So I think there's kind of a choice of those two ways of thinking of things. So this poem is called The Philosopher's Axe. In a pub somewhere, someone is telling somebody else they're literally not the same person they were 7 years ago, citing that thing about cells regenerating every few years. While in another pub, somebody claims that's a myth based on the average of, say, the 5-day lives of intestinal epithelial cells, the growth of toenails by 1 millimeter per month, the replacement of hippocampal neurons every 20 to 30 years. But your Achilles knows you are no ship of Theseus, no philosophical conundrum. Ask the scar at the base of your thumb if it's still the same axe. Ask the nick in your heart. And I'll finish with two short love poems, which are the last two poems in the pamphlet. This one was inspired by that app, What Three Words? I couldn't see earlier if our friend Chris is here, but Chris is a friend we walk with, and she loves the What Three Words app. There's a real poetry in looking up where you are and what 3 words are supposed to give that geographical location. So the idea being every 3 meter square on the planet has a unique 3-word formula that can direct paramedics or whoever, or pizza or whatever, to find that spot. So I think it's kind of cool to look up places like where you live, or in this case, this is the place where Emily and I first met, and see what the 3 words is. You can't see this unless you've got the poem, but all the lines in this poem are 3 words long. and it's called Fuel Wizard Drape. Whatever 3 words might conjure pizza or paramedic to that 3-meter square of Lammasland where we first told our love. My lovely, wherever in the wide world you are, I'm calling tennis, storm, arms. Meet me there. And then the last poem in this set, which is the last poem in the pamphlet, it's called Grain. I love it when I think there's probably a word for a thing, but I don't know what the word is. And then you look it up and it's a really cool word. And that happened in writing this poem. I was thinking about the grain in a tree and the circles getting smaller. And I was sure there would be a word for the smallest bit in the middle of the tree. And it turns out there is, and the word is heartwood. So what a beautiful word to put in a love poem. So this is the last poem, Grain. Some nights, after we close our books, you crawl under my arm and tell me how we were carved from the same tree. The top of your head from my chin, my hand from your ribs, the same grain running through both of us, all the way from my ear to your little toe and back up. So, rolling towards sleep, moored to your deepening breath, I count all our rings from heartwood to bark. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming along and listening and commenting in the chat as well. It's been really nice to share the poems with you. So thank you again, Amy and Sarah, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Alison, for those terrific poems. Wow, I love the new one too. It's like a philosophy poem. Fantastic. Can't wait to hear more someday soon too. Thanks so much to Alison. Get her book at Sarin Books immediately, if not sooner. Also, I forgot to mention that she can be pretty funny as well. It's not just the seriousness of identity, but it's the humor of life, of everyday life. Thank you so much, Alison. Thanks for coming.